Okay, welcome everybody to the Great Lakes Collectors Convention presented by us, Greeny Sports Cards. We are at the Card Show Live Theater that is powered by Collectibles on SI, and while we've been here, we've been talking a lot about the NFL draft, but there's reasons why we all care about the NFL drafts, because we're fans. So we wanted to talk a little bit with some guys here on why we're all fans, why we love the Cleveland Browns, why we love all the teams in Cleveland. So with us, we have Vince Guerrieri, author of Weird Moments in Cleveland Sports. We had another one yesterday. We also have one of the few fans in the NFL Pro Football Hall of Fame. We have Ray Showdawg Prisby, and we have a fan here in Dustin Cook who moved from Boise, Idaho to Cleveland, Ohio because of his fandom of the Cleveland Browns and is one of the hosts of the Here We Go Brownies podcast. So we wanted to talk a little bit about why we're all fans. I grew up as a Cleveland Browns fan. Many of you know my dad worked for the Cleveland Browns and in the media for a long time, and it's been in my blood to be a Cleveland Browns fan. My hero, Hanford Dixon, was here today. I got to talk to him and reminisce when I was a kid being at training camp wearing the number 29 jersey. So things like that are fun to us, and these are why we are fans. So Vince, let's start with you. You wrote a book about the weird moments in Cleveland sports. What was your reasoning in writing that, and how did you grow up a fan of Cleveland Browns?
Well, honestly, it was my pandemic project. There were a lot of we were very fortunate. My wife and I, we didn't get sick. We were able to keep working, but I had a lot of free time, and there were no sporting events to watch. And I had a discussion with a friend of the show, Chris McNeil, and he had started talking about all of the weird things, because it really does seem like Cleveland has an inordinate amount of strange sports happenings. And I said, I bet I can get an outline out of this. And I got an outline out of it, and I went to Gray Publishing. Gray Publishing is here in Cleveland. They published Hanford Dixon's autobiography, Omar Vizquel's autobiography, Joe Tate's autobiography. So they are very involved in Cleveland sports publications. And they said, yeah, we can do this. And the book kind of came out. I, like my man here, grew up in Youngstown, so it was kind of divided territory for many, many years. And I was a kid in the 80s, so there was a pocket of 49er fans there because the DeBartlos owned the team. So, I mean, I could have gone in any number of directions. And Bernie Kosar put his thumb on the scales, and I became a Browns fan. And I'll tell you what, my father was actually one of those guys. He followed Paul Brown. He's been a Bengals fan since Paul Brown started the team, and he is very suspicious of everybody who's hopped on the bandwagon in the last 5 years.
Yeah, Mike, it's things like that drive us to watching the games and reading the stories. And Ray, you've actually took it maybe a step further, and you've been inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame for your fandom of the Cleveland Browns. But before you were inducted, there had to be a reason that you enjoyed the Browns. And what got you started as a fan?
Well, for me, I took a different road. When I came out,
Closer.
check. When I came out, when I was born, I was a 10-pound baby, and unfortunately, I was born in Pittsburgh. So when I opened my eyes and I seen the doctor had a Pittsburgh Steelers headband on, he went to smack me to wake me up, but I was already awake, so I smacked him first, and then from that day, I've been a Browns fan ever since.
And you've grown up, you've done some things inevitably to where you are now. You're wearing the jersey there, the 32. Is that who you grew up and watching and playing? And is that your favorite?
Oh, absolutely. So like my astute partner over here from Youngstown, it was a little different for me. I started in the 60s, and Youngstown was all brown.
I was going to say all the Steelers fans were back in the woodwork then.
Exactly. They were under rocks, or
They went back into the woodwork in the 80s, too.
Right. They were in hiding. So for me, it wasn't a choice. And being that Jim Brown and the Browns were probably the biggest thing, on TV in the northeastern Ohio, it was a natural fit for me.
We go from that extreme. You know, we're here from Northeast Ohio, Youngstown, Cleveland, Boise, Idaho. And Dustin Cook, his fandom brought him to Cleveland, Ohio, working in 92.3 The Fan, and also working and hosting the Here We Go Brownies podcast. Dustin, I don't even know how to ask the question. How does one become a fan of the Cleveland Browns in Boise, Idaho?
People ask me if I'm crazy, but it's actually a very fun story. My friend moved from Lorain, Ohio in the 3rd grade to Boise, Idaho. And he invited me over like all new friends in the neighborhood, and he's showing me posters of Bernie Kosar. And I'm like, who's this guy? And he's like, oh, he starts like rattling off all these stats of how great Bernie Kosar is. And he's going to take us to a Super Bowl. So, of course, I'm wanting to be, with my new friend. And then his dad starts a Browns backer chapter in Boise, Idaho in 1988 and actually starts a fan club. That was back when you had satellite dishes. You had to get the game. So it wasn't even like, so these are hardcore. And then his dad later on became ill. And he's like, why don't you take over the club? And the joke was, here's this guy from Boise, Idaho, running this Browns backers club that's never been to Cleveland. Well, I've been to Cleveland, but has never lived there, never worked there, never went to college there, and he's leading all of us crazy people every Sunday with this club to watch Browns games. And I was like, it continued to grow and grow, and most of my friends in Boise, Idaho would tell you, at what point are you just going to move and just go? Like, you belong there. That's what your love and your passion is. And about 15 months ago, as you know, I took the plunge, came here. The people of Cleveland have the Midwest hospitality. They welcome me with open arms, and it's been fun. The podcast has done great things, and we've went a long ways. And I've meet great people like yourself and Jeremy that put on this. And by the way, I was able to come to this last year as a newbie and come up here on this stage like, okay, I hope I don't screw this up. I'm the new guy, right? But what you guys have done here and with the Great Lakes and the Greenies Sports Show has been amazing to see all these people that come out here for multiple days. And I run events in my previous life. I know how much this takes to put something like this on, all the moving pieces and parts. So that doesn't go unnoticed, by the way, because this is a lot of work.
Thank you. We appreciate it. The thing about here is we all collect, cards or memorabilia. What we've all collected here has been memories, right? The Cleveland Browns, our memories, our passion. Vince, what's a signature moment or memory that you remember vividly of the Cleveland Browns?
I actually covered the Browns for 1 year. I worked for a little newspaper out in Northwest Ohio. I ended up moving to the Cleveland area after that and getting a very brief job in a trade magazine. But they said, hey, if you're in Cleveland, why don't you go to the home Browns games and write like your snap analysis? The game was over at 4, something was up on the website by 8 o'clock. And I can just remember doing that one day, and it was 2014, which was actually a decent year for the Browns. They ended up going 7-9 that year. But they were leading the division in November, and I think it was the Raiders game. It was one of the games that was a 4 o'clock game, and I was in the press box, and I am writing, and I got into that line of work because I love doing it. And I'm writing about a Browns win, and like the sun is setting, and they've still got the ambient music out in the stadium, and Glory Days is playing. And I love Bruce Springsteen. I Have Left Orders. That's the song they play at my funeral. And I thought, this is pretty much it. I mean, when I die and go to heaven, I imagine this is what it's going to be like.
Amazing. Ray, we know that you watched the Jim Browns and the unbelievable plays. I've seen highlights. I wasn't able to see him play in person. Is there a play that you remember that just shows Jim Brown's prowess on the field? Like, is there a specific play you remember? Did he run over the Dick Butkus or somebody that you remember?
Well, my whole introduction to Jim Brown, I can remember sitting watching. I was probably 5, 6 years old. And I can remember asking my dad, "Why is he walking so slow back to the huddle all the time?" And he said, "Just keep watching it." And every time he would walk slow back to the huddle, next play 60 yards, and then 5 or 6 plays later, he's still walking slow back to the huddle. Next play, 70 yards. So that was my introduction to Jim Brown, and that's probably one of my fondest memories because I shared it with my dad.
Yeah, and that's great. You know, I did a lot with my dad. My dad worked in the radio booth with Gib Shanley, Jim Mueller, Dick Goddard, and then, you know, with Nev Chandler, and I got to go to a lot of games. It's been, you know, a terrific memory of mine as a kid, sitting up on the roof watching the Browns games, or walking down on the field or in the locker room, and I got to again talk to Hanford and Greg Pruitt and Reggie Langhorne, who I got this when I was 12, 13 years old in the locker room with these guys, and those are memories that, you know, you'll never forget. You know, Dustin didn't grow up here in Cleveland actually going to the games, but you got to watch a lot of them on TV, you know, with the satellite TV and then the direct TV channel and the Red Zone now. Do you remember like any specific game or something that you were like, I know you went to the Browns backers clubs, but you're like, this is it, I'm hooked. I want to wear orange and brown.
Well, I'll take it even a little further. I'll just say Cleveland sports in general. My uncle, when he was alive, I would always go up to the Seattle Mariners games for the Indians series when they were in town. And I remember living in that 95 season for the Cleveland Indians. And my uncle was like, you got to come. You know, he goes, I may not like the result, but the 95, as we all know, Cleveland Indians clinched the ALCS and ACL American League Championship in the Kingdom. And that moment, I was reminded, like, okay, they're going to the World Series. Like, that was a big moment because the Cleveland Indians have been bad for so long. And then the other moment for me is with my friends, that heartache, you know, of those Browns late 80s, early 90s, and them just like, oh, it's another moment. Now, you know, for me, that was all new and fresh, but they're like, it's just another moment, to his point, of Cleveland having these weird twists and turns of being a part of, on the bad side of history. And then the latest one was sitting there with my girlfriend at the time, watching the Cleveland Cavaliers capture the championship, and I'm getting teary-eyed, and she's like, what's wrong with you? And I said, you have no idea what this means to that city. This means everything to the people of Cleveland. They have had a big weight lifted off their shoulders, and they now are bringing a championship back to the city. And we all saw what LeBron did. He cried, he went on the floor, and I was like, that's why. That right there means everything to the fans of Cleveland. And so those are the kind of moments that stick out with me, just not only in sports, in football, but just Cleveland fandom in general, because I can't think of, and we talked about this in Green Bay, as you know, we'll get into that as at the draft, but Clevelanders are proud to wear it on their chest everywhere they go. You know, no matter what time of the year it is, they wear Cleveland stuff wherever they're traveling to. I can't think of a more passionate city that has a more passionate fan base than the city of Cleveland in general, because we live at 365, 7 days a week. We are fans, and this is a very special place in my mind, and coming from the outside, you can see that not all cities are built like this city when it comes to the fandom.
No. So let's talk about that, because we did have a championship parade in 2016, and a million of our friends came. Vince, the weirdest moments in Cleveland sports, there was a parade for 0-16. What would a parade be like for a Super Bowl?
I mean, I can't imagine what would happen. It's the whole city ground to a halt that day. There were stories, the Indians were playing that night, and there were stories that players for the Indians were stuck in traffic trying to get to the game. And it was a 7 o'clock game. The parade was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
And they were stuck at a 7, and they were stuck in traffic. Like I was, my day job is for a newspaper. I work for the Chronicle Telegram in Elyria. And I was in the office, and we had like full team coverage. I mean, everybody was covering this parade, which was hilarious because nobody could get a signal downtown because there were so many people downtown. They were closing rapid lots at like 7 o'clock in the morning. And I tell you all this as background. This was the Cavs parade. A Browns parade would be even bigger. I mean, it's like they would have to. I just imagine John Candy from National Lampoon's Vacation. Downtown's closed. The moose out front should have told you.
It would be unbelievable. You hear the term all the time. They would burn the city to the ground, not figuratively, but there was 1 million at the Cavs parade. I just can't imagine what would happen. And I don't even know if we will see one, but hopefully. And that's
although
why
with
we're
our
fans.
luck, the Browns are going to win the Super Bowl, and then the day of the parade, there's going to be 3 feet of snow on the ground.
Well, great. I'll take it. Speaking of celebrations, Ray, the Pro Football Hall of Fame induction ceremonies, those are terrific. You've been to a number of them. You're inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. What's it like being there when they have those induction ceremonies?
So, the cool thing about the process that we went through, we did everything that the pro players did. We got the nod from Dave Baker. We got to go to the Super Bowl. We got inducted in the Hall of Fame, the whole nine. So, I mean, it was, but I'm just going to be honest with you. Nothing can replace Jim Brown actually coming to my house. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the whole Hall of Fame process. It was great. I'll always remember. But come on, Jim Brown
Absolutely.
coming to your house in Youngstown. I mean,
I'd have spontaneously combusted. I really would have.
no, I mean it just doesn't. I mean out of that whole process. As a matter of fact, I even told him that day. I was like, so that's it, right? No, you should have to go through the process. I said, well, what can you possibly do that's going to be better than Jim Brown coming to my house? He said, well, you get to go to the Super Bowl, you get to get inducted. I was like, yeah, okay, that's all great, but you're not replacing Jim Brown coming to your house. I mean, it's just one of those things.
It is, and what a terrific memory that is. And all these things that bring these memories are things like, we have 92.3 The Fan broadcasting back there, and Nick Padone and Daryl Ryder, and all of these get us to talking about things that happen, like the draft. Dustin was in Green Bay this weekend, so you saw firsthand a trade at number 2 and all the way down. And the fandemonium culminates. The NFL does an unbelievable job with every month something different. What was it like being in Green Bay and being a part of the draft and watching what happened all the way till Mr. Irrelevant last night?
Yeah, so I had never been to Green Bay, Wisconsin, so I was taking it all in for the first time. They are so nice up there. We were joking they were almost too nice. The hospitality. They start drinking at 8 a.m. The bar's open, so drinking is very encouraged up there. But amazing, they were worried that Green Bay, can you pull off the draft? Small town, lots of people coming in. They had over 200,000 people the first night. They had to close it down for about an hour, let the crowd flow through. But it was interesting, you think of the Lombardi Trophy, and I'm like, this is the place where the Lombardi Trophy came from, and I just want one of those in my town, is what I was kind of going over in my mind. I just want one. I don't need 6. I don't need 5. I'll just take one. But it was a really cool experience. I've been to multiple drafts. I've been lucky enough to go to 5 now. And this one was really, it kind of got back to making it more about the fans. It was very fan-centric. You got to check out Lambeau Field. You got to take it all in. Larry with his Kennel 2 bus was there. And it was kind of, you want to talk about crazy fandom. Here we take a fan bus and drive it 600-700 miles to Green Bay, Wisconsin, set it up there next to the stadium. And these Green Bay fans had never seen anything like this. And they just, as soon as the bus pulls up, 40 people just surround the bus like, what is this? And I'm like, this is who we are. It's our fandom. And then to be on the draft floor and see all that and experience that, Roger Goodell there. By the way, Roger Goodell is a very nice individual. He's very hospitable with the fans. But just to see it up close, and then the big trade, for me personally, I was ready for Ashton Genty to come off the board at number 5 and go to the Browns, and then we end up taking the guy out of Michigan, and so I was like, but I understand what they were doing, but the talk was then we fleeced the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like somebody and I was like, okay, I can feel really good about this, and we're setting ourselves up for next year. And then we start taking Junkins and some of these other guys off the board, 2 running backs and a linebacker that we need some depth. And I'm like, okay, the Browns are actually having a good draft. And then the bombshell where the Browns trade up with the Seattle pick now to get to that pick, and then Showdawg Sanders drops in our lap. And I told people, you could, whatever your feelings about Showdawg Sanders is, it is crazy that he dropped that far. And I think with some of those other teams that were going to be coming up, they were going to probably nab him at that point, because at the 5th round, and if you look at it for the Cleveland Browns now with what they've done in this draft, and of course they have to address the offensive and the wide receiver position, the offensive line, but the Browns were given a lottery ticket in the 5th round of this draft. If he ends up being the starter and is everything he's supposed to be, the Browns get an A+ in this draft, because not only did they fleece the Jacksonville Jaguars, they finally found their quarterback after years of frustration and all that and resetting. But, we went from having no quarterbacks in the room to 5. So this is going to be great to watch. That's the one thing they're going to be talking about for the next 6 months is the quarterback competition and having all these guys in the room. And we know this at the end of the day, competition brings out the best. So I think at the end of the day, whatever rises to the top among all these quarterbacks will be good for the Browns and healthy for the Browns at the end of the day. And we'll probably have 3 out of 5 when it's all said and done, maybe just 2. But that was more just taking in the draft and the excitement of the fans. The International Fan of the Year was from Britain was there. I got to meet her. She was excited. She was on the floor. But it just goes to show you the fandom. People will travel from wherever. There were Browns fans from Phoenix, Arizona there. So I always encourage anybody that's never done a draft, all Browns fans, I'm challenging you next year, let's take over Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with Browns fans at next year's draft, because that'll be fun. But it's free for fans. It's literally a free event that you can go to and take in the history of the NFL. So I think they've really turned this draft into something for the fans and the big piece of it at the end of the day.
Well, listen, that's a great experience being at the NFL draft. I know it was here a couple years ago. But listen, I want to thank everybody again for being here at the Great Lakes Collectors Convention. I want to thank you guys, Vince and Ray and Dustin. And this is one of the reasons that we do these things, because at the end of the day, we're all fans. If we weren't fans, we wouldn't collect any of this. We wouldn't collect cards. We wouldn't collect memorabilia or autographs. But by being fans of our team is what drives us into some of the collecting world. So before we let you go, we'll ask one last question, I guess, Vince. Is there anything that you collect?
Oh yeah, I mean, I have I don't buy a lot anymore, but I still have a fairly decent sports collector's memorabilia collection in my basement. The big project that my father and I did when I was a kid is we would get, Donruss baseball cards came with puzzle pieces, and we would get the puzzle pieces and we'd put together the puzzles and we'd actually try and get them autographed. We ended up getting like a half a dozen of those puzzles autographed by various Hall of Famers of, and really like the 60s and 70s. So we got a bunch of those. And if you are at all interested, I'm a member of SABR, and one of the things that SABR has been promoting, there is a new documentary out on Dick Perez. And he was the artist that did all of the Donruss Diamond Kings and the Perez Steel postcards and things like that. The documentary is called The Diamond King, and it is available to watch video on demand on a couple of different services.
Now, Ray, we can do an entire week on your collection.
What doesn't Ray collect is the better question.
And we're aware of that. But I guess, what's the most prized possession that you own?
Wow. Well, the first thing that jumps to my head is, so everybody knows by now the Ernie Davis story.
Right.
So I was fortunate enough to get his original contract that he signed
Wow.
with the Browns. So that's probably one of my one of my top 10s.
Yeah. One day we will do an entire documentary on your collection. We can see some of the museum pieces that you have over here at your booth, and the Jim Brown jerseys. So one day we'll take a trip over and we'll do an entire documentary on your collection. Dustin, I know you're kind of a little bit newer into the collecting game. Is there anything that you've looked at or you thought, there's something that I want to start getting into?
Yeah, so I have a handful of collection of things. One of my prized possessions is a Jim Brown signed football, an NFL official football. But I've collected different things like programs and player books from the 50s, just cool stuff like that are just one-offs, here's the yearbook for the 56 Cleveland Browns, just cool things like that, one-offs. One of the things that Ray's is familiar with this, but I recently was able to bid on a framed Joe Flacco signed jersey, which I thought was super cool that, because what he did for the city in a course of 6 weeks is pretty fascinating. But, for me, I just kind of try to pick up some things. And then I think Ray's going to be dropping something off at my house in the next couple of months that he knows that needs to go in my collection. But he has some things called some stadium, Cleveland Municipal Stadium chairs that are going to be delivered at some point.
Fantastic. Well, again,
I got one of those too. And we actually bought it. We didn't saw it off at that last game. So.
I have a few of myself that I bought. I didn't saw off as well. But again, we want to thank you guys for joining us and discussing our fandom and why we love Cleveland sports, the Browns, Indians, Guardians, Cavaliers, and Ohio State Buckeyes. So Vince, Ray, Dustin, thank you guys. And we thank everybody for joining us at this year's Great Lakes Collectors Convention. Thanks.